unique, like a fingerprint. And so your chart really provides you that unique blueprint or manual in how you're authentically designed. And when we can start to move and shift more into being authentic in this world, which is freaking hard work, and it's very courageous to do, to be authentic and unique, isn't it? Because we get so feared of being ostracized or kind of called out or bullied when we're younger to be different. But really, human design is known as the science of differentiation. We're trying to pull ourselves out of the homogeny of society and be our most authentic, creative life force expression in the world. And when you do live more into that truth, your life flows with far more ease, and the synchronicities that show up are unbelievable, and the alignment that you start experiencing is really, it's hard to live any other way, honestly, once you start to discover yourself through this work.
That was Jenna Carroll, a naturopath and the owner of Health Alchemist. And you've landed on the Me&my Health Up podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today we're blessed to have Jenna Carroll, who studied with me at Endeavour College. Yes, we go way back, and we're looking forward to, well, I'm certainly looking forward to discussing this episode on human design with Jenna. So Jenna's going to share a little bit more about what human design is and the specific energy types, and we're going to get into the energy types. And you may be able to classify yourself, but as Jenna will tell you, it's very hard to classify yourself, and you need to consult an expert like Jenna. So before we talk too much, or before I talk too much, let's get into the episode. And I'd love to welcome you into the discussion I'm having with the wonderful Jenna. Welcome on the Me&my Health Up podcast show. How are you, Jenna Carroll?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks, Anthony.
So great to have Jenna on the show. Jenna and I studied together. So we studied at Endeavour College, and we were doing clinic together. We had a lot of fun together, and it's really good to see where Jenna's ended up in her career path, and it's really evolved. So Jenna studied naturopathy and then has this element of human design incorporated into her work of naturopathy. And so today we're going to be chatting about human design. But before we get into the discussion, we've got to hear a bit more about Jenna and her backstory. So please share your backstory, Jenna.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, so I guess before I found myself studying naturopathy and kind of getting into health, I used to be a professional ballerina. So I actually pursued a career in dance for the first 21 years of my life, which was a huge dedication and commitment. I didn't have a very normal upbringing, I would say. It was a very different way of life. I didn't do a lot of the things that other kids were doing or teenagers were doing. I actually moved overseas when I was only 16. And yeah, I even look back at it now and I'm just so amazed at my younger self. I'm so proud of her. She did a lot of big things for a young person. But with that commitment that I had to dance, it actually meant that my education and my schooling kind of took the back seat. So I had actually left high school when I was only 14 and did it by correspondence for a couple of years and kind of dropped out and just to pursue dance. And I don't regret that at all. It was an incredibly important part of my experiential learning, I guess. I think being a dancer and an elite athlete at that level, it actually really helps you to attune yourself to your physical body in a way that, the average Joe doesn't necessarily get, I guess. I remember there being a very deep sensitivity and understanding of the way that my body is functioning. And I think through that process, there was an inquiry within me that was constantly seeking, what hacks can I do to optimize my performance as an athlete? But unfortunately, at that particular point in time, I actually came across misinformation, and I came across calorie counting and, carbohydrate restriction. And I found myself falling down a really dark spiral of disordered eating. And so for about 7 long years within that time, I had really a deep struggle with my relationship to my body and food and body dysmorphia, starving myself, which eventually turned into a binge purge cycle, actually. So I was really tussling a lot with disordered eating. My whole focus in life became orientated around my body and food, really. And it was a very sad way to live my life. And I just really found that, I really fell into the depths of depression and anxiety and fear as well. And so eventually there was a point in my career where I sustained quite a significant injury, and I actually needed to get surgery. And that moment in time was about when I was 21, and it actually enforced this slowing down or stopping of the momentum, because I had never really taken more than 2 weeks off maximum from dance, because that's a long time to take off as an elite athlete. You really see it. Teachers will see it and the audience sees it. So you have to be so consistent with keeping your level of fitness up. And I'd taken, weeks off for this injury, and I had this moment of reflection going, I'm really not in a good place within my health. My body was not good. I was really struggling with being underweight, and then also really struggling with my mental health. And I guess at that point in time, I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't keep pushing through this pain. And so it was a very turbulent time, probably a year or two after letting go of my previous life as a dancer. It was basically a massive ego death, because I didn't actually have anything else in my life that I knew of that I was good at. So I had never explored anything else. And so when dance left, not only was it what I had identified with, but it was actually also the outlet that my younger self must have manifested that really helped me cope with a lot of difficulties within my life at a younger age. So it's also kind of like church for me, or my spiritual outlet and all that stuff too. So it was a really big transformation, me trying to figure out who I am and other modalities of support that I can use that will help keep me alive, basically. And so I found myself kind of moving out of disordered eating through, I found yoga, and creating a consistent practice with yoga and breath work and meditation. It really stilled myself and helped me to feel into the corners of my body again that I had been so switched off from, and started to help me to accept my body in where it was at that time. And I think through that acceptance, like over many years, because it's probably been almost 10 years now since that time, that I have found that acceptance point has led to a lot of deep self-love, actually. And through that journey of self-acceptance and creating more sensitivity around my body's mechanisms, was discovering nutrition in a whole new way, and starting to fuel myself with nutrient-dense whole foods, and the difference that I started to feel when I was oscillating in and out of, it's very typical for someone moving out of disordered eating to kind of go in and out of eating very well and then swinging back to the old habitual behaviors and patterning. And so there was a time like that, but it really provided me this deep contrast into how it feels to be in your most radiant, expressive health, and then how it feels to be in your most darkest place as well. And I guess it was a self-discovery process. And within that process as well, there was this trying to rediscover who I was as well as a person. And it made me very intrigued in a system like astrology. So I was also very interested in astrology for kind of giving me an objective understanding of the particular energy and person that I am. And I guess that's what's leading me down to what this conversation is going to be more about is the human design system. And I started studying naturopathy and nutrition when I was maybe 23 or 24, 23. And during my course of studies, I discovered human design. And that's when a lot of stuff started to change for me in understanding the unique mechanics of the way in which my authentic energy is designed to operate. Having gone through such a big chunk of my early life, being so deeply conditioned, almost institutionalized by a system, it was very hard for me to ever have a grasp on who I was, actually. So using this system has been very life-changing for me, and I've found myself somehow merging it with the work that I do with naturopathy now, because what I've discovered, and what you've probably also discovered, Anthony, is that oftentimes you can only get so far with people's physical health, before you hit a ceiling, because they are so entrenched in certain conditioning and patterning. And so I love using human design to understand their energetic biomechanics. And so how can I actually individualize and this treatment for this individual more deeply? And then how can I also get them to see or build more awareness around the parts of themselves that have potentially been conditioned or living out of alignment with who they authentically are?
Wow, what a journey you've been on, Jenna, but very inspiring in terms of that independence you developed leaving school at 14 years old and then traveling the world at 16. And I can see how, like on your Instagram profile, you define yourself as an entrepreneur because you develop such great, independence and be able to basically take on the world at such an early age, and you're still taking on the world at where you are to now. So just in terms of that identity, who do you identify as yourself today? You're once a ballerina. How would you identify yourself now?
I guess that's quite a deep question. It could be quite a deep question. I just am, it is my essence. It is my being. But, if we want to put any labels on, it would be that I work as a naturopath and a human design analyst, and I'm a dancer. I still dance and I still love all that stuff. But underneath all of that is my multidimensional self that is constantly expanding and becoming. And I just am.
That's fantastic. I just wanted to understand in terms of where, you've been such a long road to that that self-discovery and that understanding of self journey that, I was wondering, where you've arrived today, and clear that you are who you are and you know who you are. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think I discovered through that massive letting go of, this massive death in my life at that point, that when we label ourselves as something and attach ourselves to a label, it's actually very limiting. And, it can make you feel claustrophobic, and that there is nothing more to you than that, nothing more of value to be offering the world. And I think that now I really actually veer away from defining myself, because I love being open to the flexibility of who I am. And I think we are all incredibly multidimensional, and we'll move through this world and life and find many different passions and talents along the path as well. And I think it's really important that we stay open to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no doubt the audience listeners are very intrigued about this human design work that you do. They're probably thinking, well, what is that human design? Tell us a little bit more about that, Jenna.
Okay, I'll do my best. Okay, so human design is a very unique science, actually. It's a full-blown science. It's actually a science that helps us understand our energy mechanics of our aura, actually, or our energy field, whatever you want to call it. Human design is a system that's actually founded upon 4 ancient sciences. We've got the Kabbalistic tree of life, the chakra system, astrology, and the Chinese I Ching. We also tie in some more contemporary forms of science with human design, which makes it quite a grounded and practical system, which I love. And so it's incorporating things like genetics, quantum physics, and astronomy. And in human design, they talk quite heavily about these subatomic particles called neutrinos. And these neutrinos can be measured, and anything that carries a mass carries with it some kind of information. And these neutrinos are actually produced from stars, the sun, and some planets, and they literally travel at the speed of light around our Earth's atmosphere in every second of every day. We are constantly swimming in a neutrino field, which is kind of like this energy field of the higher cosmic principles that are at play at this point in time, because we have to remember that we are just little specks floating around on a big rock in space all the time. We kind of we forget that, and we are at the mercy of some higher energies that are at play. But basically, when you took your first breath, Anthony, and when everyone was born, there's a certain crystallization or an imprintation of the neutrino field at that particular point in time, almost creating like a cosmic DNA of some kind within an individual. And so we're all walking snapshots in time of the higher universal energies that were at play at that time of birth, which kind of explains this system a little bit more scientifically for people to understand how it works. But basically, we use your birth information, so your birth time, date, and place. We plug it into some software and it produces a chart. And your human design chart is that imprintation. It is a representation of your unique energy signature that you have arrived here with. And it's actually a very objective understanding of your most authentic, real self. Beyond the conditioning field that we're exposed to in our lifetime, not only from this neutrino sea that we're constantly experiencing, but also through our parents and society at large and everything that we get influenced by as we walk through and navigate this world. And so we can get so lost in this journey. We can get so far removed from who we actually are. And that's when we are living a life that is actually not in alignment with our authentic, energetic truth, we enter a lot of resistance in our life. You probably felt that when you've worked a job that potentially your parents told you to do because that was seen as successful. And so you're conditioned somewhat by them to do that thing, but you're sitting there and in this work not progressing in the way that you thought you would or how your friend is, because your particular energy operates very differently to them. You know, it might work for them, but it's probably not going to work for you. And so resistance can show up as like this really a lot of negative emotions, tension, anger, frustration, bitterness, disappointment. And we also enter resistance within our physical health when we are misaligned with the way we're actually exchanging this particular energy that we all hold. Just like we have 4 different blood types, there's actually 4 different aura structures that humans are walking around with. And I really feel that if we all understood each other on this level, I think our world would actually be functioning in a very different way. But in saying that, even though there's just 4 aura types, there's a lot of depth to you as an individual with your human design. There's billions of variations of human design charts. It's quite unique, like a fingerprint. And so your chart really provides you that unique blueprint or manual in how you're authentically designed. And when we can start to move and shift more into being authentic in this world, which is freaking hard work, and it's very courageous to do, to be authentic and unique, isn't it? You know, because we get so feared of being ostracized or kind of called out or bullied when we're younger to be different. But really, human design is known as the science of differentiation. We're trying to pull ourselves out of the homogeny of society and be almost authentic, creative life force expression in the world. And when you do live more into that truth, your life flows with far more ease, and the synchronicities that show up are unbelievable, and the alignment that you start experiencing is really, it's hard to live any other way, honestly, once you start to discover yourself through this work.
Wow. So it just, I'm sure the listeners are now intrigued about the archetypes, or, you know, the different types in terms of those aura fields that we are, you know, made up of. So if you want to just sort of run through the archetypes, I don't know if that's the right word. Am I using the right word?
It's more known as the type. They call it the energy type, or the aura type. Yeah.
Aura type. That's it. Let's stick with aura types. So yeah, please share the 4 aura types.
Yeah. So firstly, I'll just say that the aura types these are the sheer mechanics of your aura. It's not necessarily describing like personality traits or anything like that. It's just sharing with you the structure of your aura and the way it's designed to exchange its energy. And even though there are like 4 distinct aura structures, there's a lot of variant and variation within each of these structures. And so like this system goes extremely deep. You can find out things about yourself, like even your digestive process and the way that your cognition works, and whether you're someone that fits routine or is someone that's meant to be more fluid with your routines. There's so much depth with it. But to start with, and the entry point into human design is really, this is probably the most important thing to grasp is understanding what each aura types are and what category you fit in within this. Because if you can start to learn to work with your aura type, it's kind of like a master key that naturally will unlock the rest of your design as well, if you can start to experiment. And that's another point I just want to quickly say, is that this information is meant to be used as an experiment. It's not meant to be taken on as a sheer truth, a dogmatic truth. It's not here to be believed in with blind faith. It's actually a system that is meant to be used as an experiment, so we can really see for ourselves what the truth of it is and what's true for us. Because really, when it comes down to it, the only real truth you'll know is through your own experience with these things, and that's what human design is trying to offer us. So with the energy types, it's very, it's interesting. So the first energy type I'll discuss is actually the energy type that you are, Anthony.
Awesome.
So I'll try and do this as quickly and concisely as possible, but just know that this is just giving you a little taster of each energy type. So the first energy type I'll discuss is the manifestor. And the manifestor energy type makes up approximately 8 to maybe 10% of the population. The manifestors they are the leaders of the world. They are the initiators. They are here to initiate people into a new way of life, a new paradigm, a new world in some sort. They have you have an incredible connection to the universe, whether you're aware of it or not, but there's a certain impulse that moves through your body. And you may understand this, Anthony, but it's a feeling like of an urge, like an urge to do something, an urge to create, that just a spark of inspiration that will move through you. And in that moment, you have to go into your creative process and whatever that might look like. And the manifestor needs to be in that creative process. And so their aura structure kind of sounds a bit negative, but it's not at all. They describe it as being closed and repelling. And the reason being, though, is because your aura is here to trailblaze. You're here to open up the path for others to kind of jump on board with you and kind of work with you. And so I almost liken it to the tip of an airplane, like the nose of an airplane just pushing through the air. And that's the kind of energy of your aura, Anthony. You're here to really spark people into action. It's an incredibly powerful aura to have. It's probably one of the most biggest energies to hold, I guess. And that's not a negative thing. And sometimes I see manifestors that really contract their bigness because they've been taught somewhere along the line to play small, right? And the manifestor is not here to play small. Like, just an example, J.K. Rowling that has a mass empire of Harry Potter. She was a manifestor. She initiated a world within a world. This is such a divine ability that you have. The thing is, though, with the manifestor is that you don't necessarily need to you don't need to necessarily build or actually work to sustain that energy. You actually have a more an unsustainable energy in the way that you operate. Like, you have this immense energy to get things started, to begin and create a new movement of thing. That requires a huge amount of energy. It's that firework that really needs to be lit up, before it can really fire off. And that's kind of the energy that you have.
Fantastic. Yeah. But in terms of the closed and repel, I must say, I think I'd certainly get that sort of feedback. Like, so it's not that I don't find that offensive. I've really, that's who I am, and I think people find it hard to get into my head or understand me. And so I don't think they know I'm very approachable, but they just sort of, they sort of, I don't know. But then I do get people that said, I was initially a bit uncomfortable about, there was something I was just uncomfortable about in terms of coming to you or just getting you or something like that. So I have heard that throughout my journey.
It's so interesting. Yeah. I've got some manifestors that I'm very close with in my life, and they will often say, I've just felt like a black sheep, like it's always felt a bit socially difficult for me in my life, or they've had issues just with that because of their aura. And whether you have awareness of it or not, as soon as you enter a room, there's this feeling of like, oh, the manifestors here kind of thing. And so
well,
it's your energy field that you have, and a really big, each aura type has a strategy involved, which I won't really go into now because that will take time, but just know that each aura type has a particular strategy that helps unlock their particular aura and soften their aura. And so that's why with the manifestors, it's very important to learn how to work with their strategy, which is informing people of what you're doing next, so that you can allow the pathway to clear and you allow to kind of keep moving forward in what you're doing. And the biggest things that I tend to find with the manifestor is that they fall into patterns of either people pleasing and doing what others want them to do. And that creates deep anger within them, actually, because you are here to be in your creative flows and be independent. There's a fierce independence with the manifestor energy that really needs to be honored. And as soon as you get taken out of that independence, there's this deep resentment and anger towards people. You just want to be in peace, in your creative flow, whenever that comes through, which might be completely random sometimes, but it's all you have to do is let people know that you're going to go and start working on this next podcast episode, or you are feeling a creative flow in your business. And it's like, I'm just going to go and, let everyone know that that's what you're doing. And it will soften the energy field a lot for you just by informing. And there's other parts of your design, which maybe we can have a quick chat about at the end, that really describe to me like what you were discussing then about like people potentially having a bit of, there's like a little distance, so they may have put you on a pedestal in some sense because of another energy that you have in your aura, but it's such a beautiful energy to hold, actually. So that's kind of like a little bit of a summary of the manifestor aura. They are the initiators in this world. That's and keeping this in mind, that they are the only ones that are really designed for this kind of just make it happen, just do it type of mentality. The rest of us are not necessarily designed that way. And so it's remembering that as a manifestor as well. And so the next energy type, which makes up the majority of the population, is, well, the aura type is known as the generator aura type. And this is where it's a little bit confusing for people, because there's actually 2 aura types that kind of fit in here. So there's actually 5 energy types, but only 4 different aura structures, because 2 kind of get clumped together. And they are known as the generators and manifesting generators of this world. And these guys make up 70% of the population. They are the builders of the world. They're the ones that are here to kind of create and build what the manifestors have initiated. If we look at it in that sense, they are the ones that are here to put their life force energy into the world. And they're actually responsible for lifting the vitality of the population, because they have access to a certain energy in their chart known as their sacral energy center. And this center is the house of life force potential and the ability to build and put the energy out into the world and to create. But the biggest conditioning here for these guys tends to be that they can be really shut off to their sacral energy desires, because they are here to do only really what sparks that joy within them, that sparks that passion, that sacral energy, what brings a response to their body. They need to engage with those things that they love. And what you typically might see with the generators, and you might come across it a lot in your work, where they find themselves in a job or a situation where they are just working and grinding out a 9-to-5 job, and they're just exhausted. They're falling into burnout really easily. What they do does not light them up, and it's actually not giving them this regenerative energy life force, which is why they get that term, the generator, because they generate energy potential when they are investing it in the things that really do spark the joy for them. But when they're not, it puts the sacral energy center into this like degradation process where it starts to like burn out and fizzle out. And they typically start to feel that they become a bit of a victim to their situation, that they can't change anything, and they can get stuck in a rut of frustration, that their life isn't really flowing with the joy that they actually innately know deep down that they are here to live. They're here to be deeply satisfied by the work that they do in this world. And their aura is open and enveloping. And so this is a comfy aura for people to be around, and it's very juicy and sparkly energy. I I know very intimately because I engage a lot with the generators in my life. I'm not one myself, but I love that energy. It's so inspiring to be around. And often when I move myself out of an interaction with one of my generator or manifesting generator friends, I feel so lit up and inspired. And you guys don't often see the ripple impact that you have on others, and that your aura actually draws the world to you. You don't need to go out there and hustle so much. You have to actually wait for things to come on your path, for your sacral energy center to kind of wrap itself around and know whether it's something it has energy for, if it's something it doesn't have energy for. So it's really attuning yourself to that sacral response as a generator. So they're kind of the builders in the world. And then the next energy type is known as the projector. And that's actually my aura type as well. And they make up about 21% of the population. And they are really the seers. They are the guides. They have an aura structure that's very interesting. It's got like a projection that sticks out the front of them, kind of like a knife. And so as we interface with people as projectors, we are actually piercing into the aura of another person. And we can see into another in a way that no other energy type can. And so we are amazing at finding more efficient ways of doing things. We tend to be very good with systems, with understanding people and hacking those systems and making them more efficient. We're actually put here to help direct the energy, the sacral energy of the generators and the manifesting generators in the world. And so they do make excellent guides, teachers, but the projectors are actually here to be the future leaders of the world. We've been put here, we're a bit more of a newer aura type. But the big thing with the projector is that, again, it's one that's going to always feel a little bit different because our society is not really built for the projector energy field. Us projectors, we have limited energy resources. Unlike the manifester that does have quite a strong energy, not that you have necessarily a sustainable energy in the way that the generator or manifesting generator does, but you still have this quite a strong energy in your field. And then you've got the generators and manifesting generators that can have like this consistent workflow that happens when they're engaging with the things that they love. They get into this kind of flow state. With the projectors, they are probably the most open and prone to the conditioning of this Western world, this capitalist culture of trying to keep up with the 9-to-5 job. And often we actually can sometimes look like we are the most capable and efficient and energized people in the workspace because we actually are taking in and amplifying through our open sacral center the sacral energy of this workforce kind of sacral energy that we're constantly exposed to. So it can be a very confusing time for a projector to learn that they're a projector. I remember when I learned about that whilst I was at uni, it was such a big pivotal aha moment because for so long I could never articulate to people. Like I knew it in the back of my head. I always be thinking, I don't understand how people can work 5 days a week, 9 to 5. I just feel like I don't have the energy for that. I feel like I burn out so quickly doing work like that. And I'd always question it, even when I was a dancer. It was such a huge output of energy all the time. And I really suffered a lot from very strong burnout after those years. And most projectors will find themselves in a massive fatigue state, massive adrenal burnout at some point along the line because of their conditioning. And when I found out I was a projector, I was kind of like, oh, no, I don't want to be a projector. I want to be a generator, a manifesting generator, because they have all this amazing energy potential. But the thing about the projector is that they have plenty of energy. They just have to learn how to actually work with that energy. And so I've been able to build my whole life and my business around my particular energy, which I'm so grateful to have known before finishing uni and going out into practice, because I already knew straight away that I wasn't going to be able to work in the traditional ways that naturopaths or nutritionists worked. I was going to have to build from the foundation up a lifestyle that's going to be more conducive to the way my energy flows. And an important thing to know as a projector is that it doesn't matter how much you love something and love what you do, you're always going to need to take time away from it and rest. It's not going to be like the generator or manifesting generator that can keep just going and doing the thing that they love doing. The projectors really need to step away because their genius actually unfolds in the resting. And
I
then
can certainly see how the projector has really suited you well to be a human design leader, in a sense, helping others understand themselves, their authentic self, and, be able to see through, cut through and say, this is exactly, and this is how, in terms of, you mentioned the aura type and you said there's different makeups or different levels or different, there's the uniqueness to the person. You would really be able to see that. You have the vision to see that. So
yes.
I think it's, you've really found that, I think it, as much as you sort of didn't like the projector thing at the beginning, but it's really, it suits what you're doing now, doesn't it? Really well.
Your design is the perfect design for you to fulfill whatever it is that you've come here to, your dharma, your purpose. It's the perfect structure for you to trigger the most points of healing and evolution within your soul. So you chose this exact structure. It's no coincidence. And the projector is really here to get very good at understanding a system. They're very, if you can try, it could be the legal system, it could be the financial system, it could be a person, it could be using a system like human design or even health, a system of testing, for instance, because the real ideal situation for a projector is to find themselves as an expert within their niche field, so that they can then be recognized as that and be called forth to help, lead in creating a better way of doing things in this world. It is definitely no coincidence. And I've always been, and I think this is what my real passion is in clinical practice, is really understanding the person in front of me. That's always been what I've been more fascinated in than learning about people's pathology or their, disease state. It's been actually understanding them as an individual person. And this system helps me really cut straight into that, rather than it taking me 5 to 10 sessions to really understand a person. It's I can figure it out straight away.
But it's fantastic because, it is. And you come up with the individualized treatment plan to really get them results, essentially, because you totally understand. Yeah,
there's so much variation that will be made depending on I'll look at the human design chart and I'll just know, firstly, if they've got conditioning, and secondly, if their energy is going to work better if I give them a strong regime with what they're doing, or someone might not respond at all to that. So I have to approach it completely differently. And then not to mention there's a deeper part of human design known as the primary health system, which goes into an individualized approach to their optimizing their cognitive potential and their digestive process. And you take that into account, it's even more individualized, which I just love. That's
fantastic. It's awesome. So what's the fourth one?
The fourth one is definitely the rarest. It's 1% of the population. They are the reflectors. And, I've had the honor of reading for for 4 reflectors now. So that's not very many. I've read hundreds of charts, but basically 1 in every 100 is a reflector. I've known a few reflectors in my life as well. So they are definitely unique individuals. They have come here with a completely open design. Their aura is sampling. Their aura is here to taste their environment constantly. And the way it's designed is that they are meant to be almost placed in the middle of a community to be the canary in a coal mine with how well that community is functioning. So if the reflector is depressed and sick and not functioning well, which unfortunately a lot of the reflectors that I've had the honor of reading for have been in severe disease states, like chronic fatigue syndromes, for instance, very common, these mystery illnesses that typically will afflict the reflectors the most because of their openness, to their environment. Their environment is everything. They need to be very aware of the environment they place themselves in, because their aura is constantly tasting everything around them. They'll essentially mirror the people around them. It's that whole saying of you become most like the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, whatever that is. I can't remember exactly how many people it is, but that's very true for the reflector. They need to be placing themselves in an environment that feels correct for them, that brings them that that energy, that spark of joy and that surprise and elation that they are here designed to experience. And they actually make incredible psychologists and people that work really well with like interpersonal issues as well. And they can remain very objective, which is so beautiful, but they are like kind of the mirror to the way society is functioning, and they're a very important part, but they tend to be very unique individuals and very beautiful people.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I can, I'm trying to think if I know a reflector. My wife's a generator for sure. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I will say it's very hard to guess aura type. A lot of people say, can you guess what my aura type is, Jenna? And I'm like, it's actually extremely hard because it depends on the layers of conditioning. And it's not necessarily describing like your personality traits or anything like that. It's just the sheer energy. So it is a very hard one to guess. But some people, it's very easy to guess it as well. Like if they have been living in alignment naturally, because this does tend to happen, is that they can naturally be already living in alignment with their aura. They've discovered it through their own personal healing journeys, on their own accord. So it's very affirmative in that sense sometimes.
Oh, it's fascinating, and I can see how it really serves the work that you do in terms of coming up with the right holistic treatment plan to really support the client in front of you, being able to cut through and get right down to that individualistic element and understand, this approach won't help them because of, their aura type, but, this approach is going to really help them because some clients I certainly see that really want that hand holding and like, I need the specific recipe, send me the recipe, and then other clients are happy with the bigger picture, and in terms of the plan and how to improve their health, but others want the specific detail. And so I can see how it's really serving your work in terms of being able to pick up that they're going to need this, I'm going to give them this. They probably say, you read me like a book, Jenna. Is that what they say to you?
They always say that, wow, this is so much more than what I thought I was getting into sometimes. And so it's really a very holistic approach to treatment. It's amazing. And the other thing that I like to just, another reason why I love using it is because I'm able to give those clients tools, like tangible, practical things that they can start to use in their life, like using their strategy and authority through their human design, so that in between sessions, they can start stepping into their own inner guidance, because I really believe that we're our own best health expert. And so rather than depending so much on external voices telling us what to do, it's really about coming into our own sovereignty within that process. And that's what human design is fundamentally all about, is really coming back into your own authority and making decisions for yourself and not needing to always hear. It's incredibly important to have guides, definitely. But ultimately, that's why I love using it, is because it really helps clients to tap back into what is true for them between consults. So it's not always because sometimes between consults you kind of lose, you're not as in touch with them. So it's really nice to give them something that they can actually start working with in their life. Yeah,
that's fantastic, and I'm sure the listeners are saying, "Well, how can I get in touch with Jenna? I'd love to. I'd love for her to, cut through and share what my aura type is, and yeah. So, how can they best reach out to you, Jenna?
Yeah, so I have a website called Health Alchemist, alchemist.com.au. That's my website. You can book through there and look a little bit more into what human design is and my work. Also, I show up a lot on Instagram, mainly, to be honest, and that's just at Health Alchemist on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. And yeah, I do complete just human design only readings. So if you've already been doing a lot of work with a practitioner like Anthony, for instance, you might just want a reading to just further distill your particular energy field. We get really caught up with the physical health, but we forget that there's a lot more to us than just what meets the eye. We have this mechanical aura that we are working with as well. So you can kind of do one of my readings in that way, or you can work with me naturopathically as well. And through that, I also incorporate human design into my work.
And the listeners can do it, online.
Yes.
They don't need to physically see you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm based in Byron Bay, so people in Byron Bay can reach out if they'd like to do in person. But beyond that, I mainly actually practice online. So everything is set up that way. And it's actually really cool, especially with human design readings, because I give you a recording. And so it's like you've got this video that keeps giving back to you time and time again. The reading is something that is a gift that keeps on giving. You could revisit it in 10 years' time and it will still hold a lot of relevance and applicability to your life at that time as well. So yeah, they're very valuable.
Yeah, fantastic. It's been very insightful. I've learned a lot. I certainly hadn't come across human design until I started, obviously following your journey as a naturopath. And I thought, no, I think the listeners is probably just as intrigued as what I am about this human design work that you're doing. So, so great that you're able to come on the show and share, a little bit about human design and the 4 aura types. Yeah, and the listeners can obviously get in touch with you. And for the listeners, I'll include those links to Jenna's website and her Instagram in the show notes, so you can go directly to that and click on them. And your final words of wisdom, I'd love to hear them, Jenna, given that you've shared so much insight.
Wow. Well, I think it's along the lines of what I was just mentioning, that everything is already within you. You are already the greatest authority of your life. It's all within you. You've just got to remember. And using something like human design it's not here to tell you who you are. It's actually more of a triggering of your own awareness of who you essentially are underneath all that. It's a remembering process, and it's remembering that you are the authority of your life. And yeah, coming into alignment with that is probably one of the biggest blessings and contributions you could make to humanity.
Beautiful words. Well said. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Jenna. And to the listeners, thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode. If you know of anyone else that would like to hear more about human design or be intrigued about how they could incorporate that into finding themselves or finding their true self, that there could be someone that's a bit lost at this point in time, please share it with them. I'd love you to get the episode to them so they can hear more about human design and get in touch with Jenna. So thanks again, Jenna. Have a wonderful day.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Anthony.
Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.